Welcome to Talk Data to Me with myself, Craig Stewart from Dalebrook Media. Joining me is Susan Moloisane from Standard Bank. Susan, how are you doing? So good to have you on the show.
I'm good, thanks, Craig. Hopefully you are doing good as well.
Yeah, always good, thanks. And your birthday tomorrow, wishing you a happy birthday. I hope you have a great day off.
Thank you, Craig. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Susan, let's maybe discuss a little bit about, before we get into the key topic that we want to discuss today, which is really about skills within the data environment. Maybe a little bit about you and your role at Standard Bank. I mean, everybody knows Standard Bank is a massive organization. There's lots of different business units, different parts of the bank, a few people that look after data in various parts of the bank as well. Where do you fit into the grand scheme of things?
Yeah, so my role fits into the South Africa franchise. I look after data analytics for South Africa, and it's really a role that is part of a broader data community within the SA space, right?
Yeah.
The role itself sits under the engineering capability broadly, that is essentially the powerhouse for the solutions space, the solutions of the client solution space, as well as the client segments. So the data role, data analytics is seen as part of the capabilities that really power the strategy from a South Africa franchise perspective. You might or might not know, but the bank is transitioning towards a platform service organization. Yeah. So the thinking around how to set up to really make that a success is what created, data then falling under engineering, which is really at the crux of what makes a platform service organization work. So that's really the thinking around it, the role, and kind of how it fits into the broader Standard Bank family.
Yeah, absolutely. And what's the sort of understanding of that across the business in general? I think almost putting it under engineering almost seems like it's taking it back to quite a tech sort of sphere. Do people across the rest of the organization from a business perspective sort of not get to sort of see that? They understand more the insights that they get. They're not sort of getting scared of, well, now data sits in an engineering environment. It sounds too techie for me.
Yeah, so I mentioned that this capability that I lead is actually part of a broader data community in the franchise. And what I meant by that is largely the capabilities that sit directly with me from a data analytics perspective have to do with the data management aspects and the data engineering aspects of data at its core, which then makes sense why it would sit in the engineering capability. The rest of the community is then made up of the analytics capabilities that are embedded in the business areas, as close as possible to where the decisions actually need to be made off this data. So that's kind of the construct that we are working with here. So it's one big community. There's a central capability around data management and engineering at center under engineering, but working really closely with the analytics capabilities that are embedded in the businesses that they actually service. Yeah. All
right, perfect. I love that.
So that then makes it make a little bit more sense, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that sort of phrase that you use, that it's around community. It kind of gives that sense that everybody's involved in data analytics, not just the data office. And the fact that you've got analytics people embedded in the business environments makes me kind of think that there must be a lot of co-creation done around data models, data products, the actual use of insights. Is that what you're finding?
Yeah, that's exactly the thinking around organizing in this way, right? Ultimately, analytics have to be closely coupled with a business's strategy. What are we trying to do as a business, and how can we use data and insights to help us achieve whatever those objectives might be? And so the thinking around really getting those people that create these insights for our business users as close as possible to the business is really what that's about, right? We've found, like over the different periods over the last couple of years that at least I've been with the bank, that we're starting to see the maturity of the use of data and insights related to that data becoming better and better over time. So clearly there's something that works about like putting data as close as possible to the businesses that it services. And really, I guess that's the rationale around that thinking and that kind of way of organizing.
Yeah, such a great example. And I agree with you. I'm seeing a lot of organizations get to that point where they're putting, I guess, decentralized analytics into the business so that there can be that sort of innate understanding of what that business problem is that they're trying to solve, and having those daily conversations with the team.
Exactly. And our whole mandate is around the monetization of data. And the only way you do that, again, is by truly understanding what the business is trying to do at its core, and then kind of coupling that with how can we then leverage the data that we have to help us achieve that as a core mandate. So then it kind of makes sense that, you know, you get as close as possible to the business in order to adequately do something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Perfect. All right. I think one of those things we could talk about for a long time, but I think let's get on to the key topic for today, and that's around skills within the data environment, I guess specifically, and sort of the tech STEM environment a bit more broadly. There's a lot of people that say that there are potentially a lot of skills in South Africa, but obviously those, you know, specific specialist skills are very scarce. What are sort of your thoughts on where we're at in terms of the amount of skills available to people such as yourself to build up data teams?
Yeah, so I think I'd largely agree with the sentiment that these skills are scarce. We're starting to see, you know, like everybody kind of scrambling to find these skills, right? So in the recent past, you would have seen some traction in the kind of news around different big organizations really looking for this kind of skill, specifically the data skill, in supporting the various strategies that these different organizations have. So you're starting to realize that, one, it's big on everybody's agenda that they need to acquire these skills to support their business strategies, but that two, we're all really scrambling for the very few skills that are available in the market, which then begs the question, if that's the position we find ourselves as an industry, how do we then create more of something that we all need? Right? Then the conversation around skill and investment in skill becomes a real thing. And I think it's something that a lot of people in industry are starting to realize the need for, and starting to make some level of investment in. And I think we'll see that accelerate quite a bit in the near future, you know, off the back of what we've already seen happening in the industry for the skill.
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to get into a little bit later, just kind of set this up, is around the internal reskilling of people within organization as, you know, companies become a little bit, I guess, more digital, you know, a younger workforce, etc. So we'll park that for now. I'm going to come back to that. What are your thoughts around the amount of work being done at a school level, both primary and high school, and then into university level, to actually promote data analytics as a profession? I think, you know, when you and I were growing up, you kind of wanted to be a pilot, a lawyer, an accountant, you know, your mom or your dad was a CFO, or there's someone in marketing. Very rarely did you come across someone who was within the data space. And I guess, you know, in that time, they maybe didn't have the sorts of titles, but what I've seen over the last 6 years, and a conversation I've been trying to get going, is around how do we make becoming a chief data officer as aspirational as becoming like a CFO or CMO or something like that. There just seems to be a bit of a disconnect in the communication that this actually exists as a job.
100%, right? And to answer your question, frankly, we're not doing enough, right? At the foundational levels. In one, educating younger people about what it is, firstly, and what kind of opportunities come out of it, right? So I think there's certainly a lot we can do as a data community to actually go and have these conversations with these younger people at very critical points of decision making for them. Think about like the choice of subjects, right, as a critical point in grade 9. I don't know if that's still a thing. And then, you know, the point at which you apply for universities or post-school education. Think about during the time that you're in tertiary education and making decisions about, like, you know, what you want your future opportunities to be like from a career perspective. Those are all critical points at which us as a data community, and myself included, yourself and all of the other various people in our community, need to be engaging with people to create the excitement and appetite for potentially exploring this thing as a real career. So I think definitely there's a lot of work for us to do as a community in really getting younger people, firstly, understanding what it is that we do and what vast opportunities exist in the space. And then secondly, just getting them really excited about doing some of this. You know, like I recall when I was making the decisions about the career I wanted to make, you know, to your point, it was really the traditional sort of careers available on the table for me to explore, and where real opportunities existed for me to fully understand what it's about and what opportunities exist. And we basically need to mirror that same thing, I think, from a data perspective. And it really isn't where it's supposed to be at this point in time.
And I guess then it kind of also begs the question around, what is it that's going to be exciting? And I've had this conversation a few times where, you know, people want to get into data science, or, you know, it's the analytics, it's the AI side, it's the automation side, the stuff that's kind of, I guess, deemed to be the sexy and more exciting side, where we need a lot of people really is around that data governance, data quality, data integrity, data architecture even. So I think that's the other thing, is not to just say that, you know, there's one path. There's so many things. If you're not very mathematically minded and coding and whatnot, and building algorithms is not really your thing, but you love the data environment, there is data governance as well. There's data quality management. There's so many areas that will fit so many different personalities. And I think there's a big job there to promote all those areas.
And I think that's what makes it exciting for me, right? Because it is one of those few or rare careers that you come across that actually allows you to explore such various things that you could do with yourself, right, as a professional in this space. So for me, it's really a broad spectrum that caters for virtually every type of person that is truly interested in being part of the data community. So that in itself for me is exciting. And you asked, like, how do you build excitement around this without more sexier aspects of the career? And for me, it's the contribution that whatever it is that you do across the spectrum of different things that you can do, that it ultimately makes, like the end goal, the outcome that you would have contributed to, whether you're a data governance specialist, a data quality specialist, the person actually creating the models on the analytics side, whatever it might be, the ultimate outcome is there is some value that was created out of the use of this data, and my contribution actually resulted in that being a reality. Because you can't really get that outcome without any part of the full data spectrum being part of it, right? And that's how you create the success. It's almost saying, if I'm not the person flying the plane as the pilot, and I'm doing all the other stuff that actually makes sure that a plane is commercially viable and can fly in the air, it really isn't, you know what I mean? Like, everybody that's involved in making sure that plane is in the air, can actually onboard customers and service those customers while they're on, is contributing to an experience that is ultimately flying. And you use those similar analogies that we have in the more mainstream careers to create excitement around something that is maybe not as well understood as those. So I can definitely see different ways in which I can create excitement around our career, because it really is exciting.
Yeah, for sure. And I know from seeing your LinkedIn profile and having a conversation with you, you studied information systems. Coincidentally, so did I. I run a conference company, and you're the head of data analytics for the South African franchise. I studied a bit earlier than you. And when I was doing that, you know, we did, you know, all the sorts of things that would have built up to this. But at that time, no one saw a career opportunity in data. It was kind of, IT was kind of really seen as the hardware, nuts and bolts side of things, which never really suited me. I was kind of, you know, it was 2001. It was kind of like everyone's getting into IT. So I studied information systems and never really used it. Whereas a friend of mine who studied with me is now the principal data analytics lead for Anglo-American in Australia. So if I'd kind of followed that path, you know, the sort of career trajectory and the amount of opportunities just opened up. But I think you at least focused on it and ended up in your position. So I think there is, you know, people just need to be a bit more aware. I just have no idea. Otherwise, I probably would have followed a similar path.
Let me tell you how I ended up being the head of data analytics at Standard Bank, for any organization for that matter, is purely coincidence. If you look at the rest of my profile, I spent so much time in like consulting, problem solving, front of business, strategy areas. It's only now that I really reflect on it to say it's almost come full circle, unintentionally so. That, like, I started with the information systems qualification, worked in IT a little bit, then went off and did like strategy for the longest time, and then kind of came back into data, which was your point, an area when we were studying that we almost glossed over. It was really the crux of what we were doing, but actually sets you up so well to be able to do something like this, right? And form part of like what is now a maturing data community.
Yeah, for sure. All right. So I think just on the promotion side, I think anybody watching this, you have a duty to tell your son, your daughter, your younger brother, sister, niece, nephew, whoever it is that's studying at the moment, getting to those critical decision points, like Susan says, I think you have a duty, if you're in this space or you're aware of this space, to tell them that there are great career opportunities in data, because I think, you can't just come through things like this. We can't put it on all the schools and the universities. I think it just needs to be a constant conversation. My mom, my dad is a chief data officer, head of data governance, and let that sort of permeate through everyone. So there's my little evangelist pitch for the world of data. So Susan, let's talk a little bit.
Beyond just like telling one or two people about data, maybe just also, there are enough of us now out there that people can actually experience the world of data. There's something so much more powerful about an experience than just being told about something. And I think the more we get people to experience what it might be like to become a professional in the space, the more, excitement we can create, in addition to obviously telling everybody that you possibly can about it.
Absolutely. All right, let's move in then to internal skills development, because I think that's one of maybe the answer, sitting under everybody's nose, that you've got this workforce that is changing over time. You're very much a digitally focused environment, a platform focused environment. They've got data skills that they're building. Maybe some roles are kind of falling away, becoming redundant in sort of the true sense of the word, not the sort of workforce and labor sense of the word. How much work is being done to then say, okay, well, these people have got that sort of skills, they've got an underlying knowledge and an interest, which I think is a key thing, in the data environment. Let's pluck them from these roles that are maybe slowly shifting, dying out, and putting them into the data environment to plug that skills gap. Is that something that you see as a possibility, and is it something that you're doing?
100% a possibility. Based on the fact that the skill is so scarce in the market, like we've already discussed, it almost becomes one of the very real options that organizations have, right? Because with scarcity comes cost, right? So to hire in a new data professional into an organization will cost you significantly more on various different levels than it will to potentially upskill somebody that has the correct core competencies that can just kind of be taken to the next level. So certainly at Sandbank, we are like aggressively exploring that as an option. We've actually started some pieces of work around upskilling people on various aspects of the data spectrum, and starting to repurpose and redeploy those people in line with what is required for our strategy. So I definitely see that as something that is becoming a real option for people, just purely because, to your point, you are starting to find that some skills become redundant, but they actually form a nice foundation for what you require in the data space, and it's just a no-brainer that you then naturally transition that way. But again, with scarcity comes cost and expense, and what is the most commercially wise, for lack of a better way to maybe like plug the gap that you have. So this is certainly becoming a real option, and we have certainly started doing it. And I know other organizations are also seriously exploring ways in which they can do that if they're not already doing it. So I see that potentially being our short to medium term solution for the gap that we have in some of the areas of the data spectrum, as opposed to the build, which might take a bit longer when it pertains to building out the organization. So definitely a real option, and something I would also encourage people to explore, to really plug some of the gaps that we have, especially when you talk about capabilities like the data governances, the data quality, the broad data management capabilities. There's a real opportunity to repurpose quite a broad set of skills that you might have in the organization into those spaces that, to your point, are actually where we lack real specialists and professionals that truly understand how that data hangs together and works. So definitely seeing more and more of that. And I think that will probably be our strategy as a broader community in the shorter term, at least, as we try to build out what, like a proper marketplace for data skills looks like.
Yeah, perfect. All right. In closing, I just want to ask you something. I know that you sort of, as you said, you went off into strategy and did some slightly different things and have kind of come full circle. But you studied for your MBA, which you achieved, which is fantastic. And I know there's a few others, Moloko Komani, who was on the show a while ago, also MBA. There's quite a few data professionals who have done their MBA. And to my knowledge, it's not necessarily data specific, majoring in data or anything like that. How has it helped you sort of just understand and navigate the business environment as you've driven this data strategy across organizations? Maybe something that more data professionals should really look at to be able to then really kind of get data into the business a little bit more seamlessly than if they don't have that sort of knowledge.
Yeah, so in my mind, an MBA is really about building a broad set of skills that ultimately give you commercial acumen, right? Like a broad understanding of how a business works and the different parts that actually make it work. And I think sometimes if you concentrate on just being a deep specialist in a specific area, you miss out on how your specific area kind of fits together into the broader into all the other pieces to actually make a business. And the thing that I would say an MBA is helpful with is really helping you figure out how all of these things ultimately fit together to create the outcome that is required. And then if I think about really what data is about, right? And why data is such a hot topic at the moment, given, like where the world is in general, with 4IR, etc. It's really about how do you create advantage, like for business, right? Or any other organization or any other objective that you might have. Is how do you create advantage? How do you leverage this asset that you have in data to create value? And in a business context, that really means if my business is about selling, pairs of socks, how do I leverage any data I can get my hands on to make sure that commercially I increase my revenue line, decrease my cost line, whatever the metric might be, in order to create value. And if you don't understand how a business works and how you then leverage this asset that is data to really help that business achieve its objectives, then there's something missing in the broader context of commercial acumen. And I think that's where an MBA is helpful. It just helps you figure out, like, in my little piece, how do I actually contribute to the overall value that this business needs to create? And what do I need to be thinking about as a data professional that truly creates value for this business? And that's where I found it to be helpful. And I definitely encourage anyone to take up an MBA or any other qualifications that just gives you a better understanding of how things hang together commercially, which is really what you're enabling as a data professional.
Perfect. Thanks so much for that insight. And Susan, thank you so much for joining me. It's been fascinating to chat to you. I love sort of your take on the skills thing. And I think just go back again, give people that experience, make sure that they know about it. And together we'll kind of solve this skills gap in South Africa and get more people, young women, etc., into these technology environments, because it really is the jobs of the future. Susan, keep well. Have a great one. Thanks so much for joining me.
Thank you, Craig. Thanks for the invite. Cheers.
Absolute pleasure. And there we go. Another Talk Data to Me episode with myself, Craig Stewart.